this session is blended learning and AEA online resources. And what we're going to do is we're going to be going through, we've got two teachers here, we'll introduce ourselves in a moment. Two teachers that have been working on blending over 3 years together, and they're going to talk about kind of how they started and the ways they amped it up as the years have gone on, and how the AEA online resources have now fit into that part of their blended learning as they're creating learning opportunities for all learners. And I will be talking about that part. Let's see if my clicker works. Sorry. It worked earlier. On. There we go. That on button is going to get me. All right. So I'm Dianna Geers, and I'm the teacher librarian at Brentwood AEA. And this is just my second year there. I was a classroom teacher in Cedar Rapids for 19 years, and then a librarian for 7 years. Before then I came and joined the AEA. So I've always used the online resources and always done my own version of blending. I don't know that it was actually blending at that time. Oh yeah, Jennie's next.
Hold on, sorry. I'm Jennie Rickels. I am an 8th grade science teacher currently. Throughout my years of teaching, I've done anywhere from 5th grade to 8th grade science and 5th and 6th grade math. So I've been in the blending world for about 5 years now, and yeah, it's been pretty cool. Well, I can't wait to tell you more about it.
And I'm Mike Geers. I've been at Linmar, which is called the middle school, 8th grade, a couple years in 7th, for about 22 years, I believe it is now. So we're just excited to talk about what we're doing.
All right, so with everything in PD, they always tell you to start with your why. So we started thinking back about why did we start doing this, and what was the big reason that pushed us to quit doing whatever we were doing before or enhance it to make it, 1,000 times better. And my two big reasons are the first two. I was spending literally all of my time outside of school working on school. My kids were very small at the time. They were like 4 and 1, and I never saw my family. I was home, but I wasn't home. And so I was working harder than my students, and I wasn't seeing any results. Like, I was trying to drag kids along with me instead of empowering them to become the learners that I knew they could be. And then that then in turn made me not feel like an effective teacher. So I wanted something that could help me do as good as I wanted to do, but not put the pressure on me to completely feel like a failure, like at the end of every day.
Okay, my line on the screen says it's my principal's fault. And so I just like to blame him. Our district, especially the high school, was moving towards blended style. And they were taking people to visit Huntley High School in Illinois. And I had worked on some blended stuff or read about it, trying to get a feel for it. Always tried to incorporate technology
I was just clicking on the hyperlink.
in effective ways. But he invited me to go along with one of the groups. And I told him on the ride home, I said, thanks a lot. I've been teaching 8th grade science for like 15 years now. Yeah, I know our content was just getting ready to change, but I was comfortable. I knew what the kids needed more work on, but now he took me to this place and mind's been blown. Now I see a different way of doing things that can be really effective and really great for the students, and now I have to change. That's why I say it's his fault. And our last part in there was our high school is on their 2nd year of blending classes, and they've just exploded in the number of different courses that they have as a blended option. And so our principal also wanted us to be 8th grade, kind of be a transition year, kind of introduce students to the way that they could be in a blended class and see if that might be something they want to explore when they get right into high school.
And we have this, for everyone else's why, we have a quote from Marzano who says that blended learning is no longer the future of a classroom, but it is the present. There's all kinds of research and publications about it, and we don't want to go into all of that today because we just want to share what it's like in the field. And I know that you probably have some of that background information, and if not, you can get it, and I'll show you some resources where you can later.
So one of the biggest switches, so after I started doing blended at my old school, and then when I came to Linn-Mar, I've been working with Mike for 3 years now, I just noticed there was huge amounts of changes in the students as I started to learn and just try new things in my classroom, and I learned that there was this thing called blended learning, and then I finally had something to connect to. So what we noticed is we've been able to get 8th grade, yes, 13 and 14-year-olds to work at their own pace and actually get stuff in. They've taken ownership of their learning. They're actually excited about it. I have parents actually stop me at Target now and tell me that their kid's excited about science, they're excited about learning, and they're actually going home and talking to their parents. So that's a number 2 for a 13, 14-year-old to actually go home and talk to their mom and dad about school. They're engaged for the most part. I mean, we always have a few here and there, but they really get into what they're doing, and there's a lot more motivation there. And the biggest thing I think for me, for middle schoolers, is their confidence has just increased. Kids that feel like they can't do something, and as it gets harder and harder as they grow up, you know, when they're in elementary, they feel like they can take on the world. And in middle school, something happens. They start to feel like they're not smart or they're very smart, and they either go to one side of that continuum and they don't feel like they can be successful. This changes that. You can take those kids from the not smart side and they will feel like just $1 million. They feel like they can take on anything because they've learned that they can do school, they can do science, they can do the classes that they thought were really challenging and hard.
One of the neat things for me was we talked about doing more work than the students, right? I'm up there in front of the class, I got my lessons going, I'm up there working hard, and they're just kind of sitting back there looking like they're learning or trying to pay attention. And so with our blended style, it's been really nice because we still do a ton of work, but it's more on the front side. And so we've got stuff set up for them, and we're actually in lessons, we're kind of as the facilitators. The kids have got their directions, they're working, and we're just kind of, if you come to our classes, you'll see us, we're usually just moving around and answering questions or checking on kids, making sure they're staying on task. So that's a lot of what we're doing. It's been really nice with our increased technology that we've been able to have for devices, amping up that technology piece, getting more creative in our lessons. And as long as the lesson is engaging and is a good lesson, the kids are more on task, and that decreases our behavior issues too.
Oh, I have one more. So what is blending? And these are some of the items that Mike and Jennie have really noticed, is that their term of blended learning is that it's student-centered, they have voice, they have choice in what they're using to learn and what they're using to create the artifact to show what they've learned. And so it's more about them and having the information and activities that are geared towards their interests and their needs. It's differentiated. They have small group, whole group, and individual. You guys could probably speak about this more, but they use data formative. They're gathering formative data as they're working with the students and using that to help guide their choices. They're able to use the technology instead of just having it be like what they could do with paper. They're having them look at more problems and exploring the issues and trying to use technology to help create solutions and experience the problems in a different way. Oh,
Yeah,
this is part of high school.
Yeah. You can switch to the next one, I'll kind of hit on it there.
Okay.
So with all of that slide with Beaker on it, we use that sort of as to remind us not to get sidetracked. Like sometimes we start to get, like, we dream big, I won't lie. We like think about things that are huge and then we say, okay, let's make it realistic. Let's actually make it so it's gonna work in our classroom or work this year right now. And so we will take a lot of those big ideas and we look at that and we think, okay, how can we do this, this, and this with it? And just look at that sheet to kind of keep us grounded in what we're doing so we're not getting too far out of staying on structure. And so these are some of the things that we do in our classroom. Now it's interesting because we are not just teaching science now, we actually teach how to be a learner by using this stuff, and the kids get the content along the way. It's a very scary shift because you go from having all the control to having to just trust that you put the right stuff in front of your students and saying they will get this, and I'm still here, I'm still helping them, I'm still like with them along the side, but you're not going to be necessarily leading them to the information. You're going to help them explore it and find it by what you put out there. So a few ways that we've done this. We start the year off where we only have them do 1 or 2 things at a time, and then we build up and we build up and we build up. So we just finished our first unit, and they have gone through all of these things except for the true self-paced learning. We've done a tad of it. By the end of the year, we'll actually have them do their last unit completely self-paced. And when we say self-paced, the rule is you have to go at least as fast as me, as the teacher. So self-paced can be scary. It sounds like they could just have all the time in the world, and that's not it. We have to teach them, like, you can't be slower than I am. So we think, what can a general 8th grader do? And then we actually make it just a tad bit slower than that, so that we don't lose any of our students that may need more time to think or create or do. We also sort it out as must-dos and like nice-to-knows and need-to-knows. So we have that going on too, which we'll get into that a little bit more. But these are just some of the ways that we put out on our learning management systems, either Google Classroom or Unified, to be able to have the students work through content. So, like I said, it can be a little scary, but it works. I wouldn't be here right now. Oh, I thought it was still me? Oh, sorry, it's still me. So the first thing that, when I started this, the first thing I learned about Blended was like, oh, you can make your classroom any way you like it. So this is my dream. This is actually at the Bass Center in Cedar Rapids, where we do some of our trainings at, and it's part of Grandwood, right? Yeah. The Bass Center is, yeah. And so that would be my dream classroom, is to have multiple like seating areas that can be moved around and changed around for the students to use. This is what we actually have. So we'll tell you how we use this in our space.
In the middle here is our hallway, and on each side of the hallway is our 2 science rooms. So we're in close proximity, and another thing that we do is we've got 4 classes each that meet at the same time, and we have 2 other classes that go back to back. And so what we do is, a lot of those times we have those kids, we mix them. They can work with kids from the other class, or we have them, like when we talk about like our station model, we'll have 3 stations. There'll be a third of her kids with a third of my kids who'll be doing something in my room, maybe a lab, and then a third of mine and a third of hers will be in her room. Maybe they've got a direct instruction, and then the other thirds will be out in this common area. So we're pretty lucky. We have a pretty large common area, and this year it's just full of chairs and tables. There was this computer lab here in the past, but we had increased laptop carts, and so now we've just got a large open space where kids come out and do independent work.
And that picture there is, we just did this was a recording studio. So my classroom was a recording studio that day, and the other students were out working on their climatograms, either in the other classroom or on the pod, and then they came into the recording studio and actually created their Flipgrid videos based on that for us to get feedback on their learning. So it was kind of a cool experience that we had never got to do before just a couple weeks ago. So.
All right, so we're going to go through kind of our transition to where we're at right now. Our first year, it kind of started out, we had our visit to Huntley in November, and we were pretty excited, and so they said, start with one thing, And so we took our next unit, as soon as we came back from Thanksgiving, we did our first blended unit with a rotation station model. So we had a third of the kids did a partner lab, a third of the kids were online, working independently on WebQuest, and another third of the kids had teacher direct instruction, and then we would rotate each group for the next 3 days. We kind of just thought about stuff as we went through our lessons, and we really didn't have anything else that was kind of blended until we got into April and May, where we had a little more time to plan. And one of the things that we found out right away was that, yeah, kids work at their own paces on some of these things. And we wanted to create enrichment, but knowing 8th graders, when they got done early and they had a list to choose from, it's like, well, I'll do something else. I really don't want to just do something that they made as an enrichment because they weren't too excited about it. Through this first year, we had minimum extensions and just the necessary accommodations for particular students, but it was still the same content for all students.
So that took us into year 2. In year 2, I moved downstairs, so my classroom used to be upstairs, and so we were not next to each other that first year. I taught 7th and 8th grade, so whenever I had 8th graders, he did as well, but they were in 2 different locations of the building. So when I moved downstairs, we really, and I was just 8th grade then, we really were able to take off a lot more. We kind of made it work for us to get a little bit more computer access that second year. We didn't make a lot of friends that way, but we did learn through that. We said, okay, we want this to be as individualized as possible, but we don't have the resources right now. Most people would have thrown in the towel and said, never mind, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to keep doing what I've been doing. And that wasn't the answer that we were looking for. I refer to us a lot as rebels with a cause. So, like I said, we didn't make a lot of friends by reserving the computer cart at the maximum that we could each week, but we just paired our kids up or tripled them up or even quadrupled them up. We did whatever we had to do to make sure that we had some of that computer access in front of them so that they could learn using the computers in a way that we didn't have access to before. We were able to add a lot of choice with our content that way, and we were able to add in some enrichment that actually was engaging to the students. For example, some of our students are well beyond 8th grade science level. Well, we could then pull them into Khan Academy and have them choose their own adventure for their resource. So instead of using a textbook that we had, they could actually jump on the same content that's still standards aligned on Khan, and they could then work at a level that was more appropriate for them. And at the same time, I could then pull small groups, or he could pull small groups of some of our struggling students who couldn't understand the text in the book, much less something that was online, and we could actually work with them. And we got to know kids. We got to really see what they were as learners, and more than just a science student, we could see what they were as like a math, literacy, just confidence, those kinds of things. The relationship, it was like part of the whole process, and it really made a big difference. What we learned that year, though, was that while we were doing better, we still needed more content. We didn't have enough choice. We just had 2 or 3 choices maximum. So, and then the other thing, we did get a lot of extensions built in and some accommodations, but they were just the necessary accommodations that you had to make according to the IEPs or 504s. They weren't all of the accommodations that we could have made. Which brings us to this year, and I think this is still me, right? Or no? Oh, it's both of us. Okay, I'll start and you finish. This year, a big thing that we've done, we actually created an accommodated classroom online for our students who need the accommodations at any level. Now we're getting our ELLs, we're getting our IEPs, we're just getting some of our struggling learners that need more time. We're making the accommodations for everybody. It's much more personalized. It's still not perfectly personalized, but we're way broader than we ever even dreamed of being. And we're only in October. This was just a goal we made over the summer. So, this year we have a lot more computer carts now. We're really close to getting to that 1-to-1 point. And that's really changed a lot of what we can do and can offer our students now. Our standards and essential learning outcomes, we were lucky enough to get some time to work on that this year. Well, basically because of all the snow days, we ended up having to do work outside of work to make up those hours. And we used that we said, let's go through every single thing we have and from the very beginning and move on, and let's see what we can do with this. And we actually use that time to really amp up our abilities that we have to be able to put stuff in front of students.
Yeah, so one of the things that when we went through all of our curriculum and looked at all of our assessments, and we looked at it and said, well, we need a lot more content, and we need to be able to have content that's accessible for all learners. And that took us to, actually luckily my wife, right, talking about this, she said, well, Grantwood AEA Online Resources has a lot of that stuff you're going to need. She's going to talk to us about the read to text and the different Lexile levels on materials, and just having lots of ready-made good stuff for us to add to our content. A couple other things I'll throw in is that we use a learning management system. We've used Canvas, we've used Google Classroom, we've used Haiku Power School. Right now there's Unified Classroom with Power School. That's where we kind of house all of our materials and makes it handy for the kids.
And so that got them, they were already thinking about universal design for learning, and that is part of blended learning as you get up into more levels of it. And that has different ways for each student to learn the same content. And it has to be represented in multiple ways for any types of learning styles or learning needs. And then there have to be multiple ways that they can do something with what they've learned and share it. And so by planning for all your learners, instead of having to make accommodations afterwards for the kids who need help, if you're always planning for the kid who has the most needs and the kid who's at the very top of the class, then everything's automatically planned for. And so you don't have to go back and do any kinds of accommodations. In theory, I mean, granted, I'm sure it never works perfectly, but it's really exciting. And the more that we get technology available, the more approachable it is to provide this universal design for learning for all learners. And in a blended classroom, it's just perfect. And so that's where a lot of people search, and there's nothing wrong with the Google. I should turn on my little, and that's even, I asked my husband later, like, where did you start when you first started? And they went to Google, and that's fine. Google can take you to some great places. And then sometimes he would go, was that you that said he would go and look at some professional networks and to see on the science, I can't think of the initial NSTA. Yeah, the NSTA, where they have discussion boards and they share resources. When I'm searching for my professional networks, I sometimes go on Twitter and follow the hashtags. But sometimes even that's not going to get it all. I just want to remind people you can always work with your librarian, whether that is the librarian at your AEA or in your district or building, because this is the one place where they might know just a little bit more about some of that content that you're looking for. So they were to the point now, they had all this, and now they just needed stuff. They needed to find as much as they could on natural disasters and the science standards they were trying to teach, and in different formats and at different levels. And that's a daunting task. And so what I did one day, I don't know, it's really boring at our house. We're empty nesters now. And so this is the kind of stuff we talk about. I guess I'll show you what he did in a minute. But one of the reasons the AEA online resources are really good is that it's updated. Some of the resources are updated every day. And so anytime the textbook is printed, which less and less publishers are actually doing that, it's automatically out of date. And so these are updated. They're available 24/7. They are ad-free. So even if you find something really good online, you still might end up with ads. Sometimes you don't. There is some really good content out there. I'm thinking of course I'm going to draw a blank, News ELA, Common Lit, Khan Academy, all these other things that are good. And then sometimes you still need more. So it's vetted. So we're getting databases that are from respectable companies and that are of quality publication-wise as well as authority-wise. And they have built-in accessibility features. So if you don't have Google Read and Write as a district and you need text read aloud, we have that in almost every one of our resources. Some of them are just video content, well, and they have closed captioning for the students who maybe have auditory issues. And then there are other read aloud features as well as translation features. So I just happened to pull one up one time to tell Mike about, oh, I can use this, about Science Flicks. And so I was showing it to him, just this main screen. So this is an example, I just clicked on life cycles. And so I said, well look, whoops, darn it, go the other way, there we go. So I said, look here, so if you were using this was on his topic, but I decided to change it. Automatically, when they're doing life cycles, it comes up with a compelling question. There are 3 reading levels for this article. They can watch this quick video to either get them interested or give them context of what they're going to be learning about. They can read this. And then even within reading this, there's a read aloud feature. So even if they select the lowest level, because that's what they feel like that day or that's what they know they need, they can still have it read aloud. And we sell it as it's a choice, not necessarily because you need it. Sometimes I listen to my texts while I'm driving. It's not that I can't read them, and I listen to books as I'm driving or walking. We just live in a choice environment now, and by selling these accessibility features just as a choice and allowing all people to use them, then it no longer becomes a stigma for the kids who do need it. So that's my soapbox on that. But then over here, they've got the 2 items there, but they've got dive deeper. So for the kids who want to learn more, there's automatically built in on diving deeper into that topic, exploring other related, that'll send them to some other websites. Provides labs, and that's help for the teacher. And then it has some opinion pieces where they can come up with some opinions of their own and opportunities for them to create and share, and then they even have a career link that goes along with it depending on what you're wanting to do. Did I get all of this? Oh, here's some other features that aren't shown on here. They have the adjustable reading levels, text-to-speech, video content. There's a built-in dictionary. It's also printable. The reading on a lot of them are printable, so if you have kids that aren't going to be able to have access online, or they were absent, or they physically need to highlight on a paper, or you don't have access to the computers that day, you could print those articles. And a huge bonus for kids is that if they have to cite their sources, the citations are already built in. All they need to do is copy and paste them into their paper. There are times when it's appropriate to have them write them and format them all correctly, but sometimes you just want them to have that act of researching and coming up with their conclusions. And having that available is a good accessibility feature as well as just a convenience. Oh, and I'm sorry, I was going to show you, I had it pulled up here. I have to click out of here, sorry about that. I was going to show you this in action. Oops, darn it, did I just close it? I did.
Well, she's getting that up. One of the things that we did this year when she came in and shared this with us towards the beginning of the year, a lot of these resources, and the good thing about it was that we really, I don't know if we made it very clear, we actually don't have a specific curriculum that we have in 8th grade science. We have our standards, but then we build it from there. We don't have like a purchased curriculum that we use. When I taught younger grades and I did have that, I still, even with like a FOSS unit or whatever, I still wanted this kind of stuff to add in because there's just our students that need more, or maybe something, the way those lessons are designed isn't perfect for your students that year always. So this is where a lot of this can come in, even if you do have a built-in curriculum. So it can be supplemental in both ways, whether you have one or not.
And the reason I wanted to just show you this is the main interface. And so you can search by keyword if you have a topic you're looking for, but you also can just go in. So when I was showing Mike the first time, I'm like, so tell me a unit that you have. And he was studying natural disasters. So I went and we looked at all of these. And so we decided to go with climate change. That's what we were studying, not natural disasters. We went with climate change. And then that takes you in and breaks it down into those areas that I was showing you. And then here's the dive deeper, it's right here. So different related information that they can look at. They even have, here's finding solutions. So looking at how they can have a call to action. There's also, just for teachers, resources and tools. There's lesson plans, there's links to standards. So it's also helpful for teachers in addition to helpful for students. And then Learn 360 is another one. So I'm just going to show you a couple others that are really, they're kind of general and they would work with lots of subjects. Science Flicks is a little more specific to science. Learn 360 covers pretty much anything you would need. And it is all video content. And so within the video, there's closed captioning, like I was speaking about. There's also variable speed. Sorry, we'll get it to come back in one moment. So if you have someone who needs slower processing time, you can have that slowed down. They can come back and watch this over and over. It also offers a transcript. So if someone, again, wants access to everything that was said, maybe they're doing research and they're going to quote something from that video, they can go into that transcript and they can copy that quote and paste it in, and then they can cite this as their source. So it's just another way to also help teach them resource. To teach them research, not resource. This also offers interactive activities. So it's not always just video. There are some other places you can search and get interactive activities that would be another way for them to learn. And citations are provided here also. And so here's the interface of this. And it has, as you can see, it even has more than just the videos, because it has articles that you can print, it has maps and flags. It's got some audio where you would just hear maybe some interviews, and they have it based around, they have featured ones that come up. So with Hispanic Heritage Month, the Quinceañera story would have fit. Some of them are full-length videos and some are shorter, so you can also search as a teacher when you're looking for content. Sorry, didn't mean to make you vomit there. There are teacher resources. You can sort the content based on different grade levels and content area. You can search by standards. And they even have it by state. The one thing I've noticed is they don't necessarily have the very brand new social studies standards in there yet, but they will, I'm sure. And then this gets me to thinking about curating. So I know Mike and Jennie mentioned that they use Google Classroom and that they've used Canvas and they've used Unified Classroom. Not everyone uses a learning management system like that. So some people use Moodle, Canvas. In the elementaries, people use ClassDojo, Seesaw, Google Classroom. Some people, when they're curating their content, rather than just having hyperlinks to everything, or not hyperlinks, gosh, I don't even think people use these anymore. What is it when you, bookmarks. I get lost with bookmarks. So having a Google Classroom is another way that you can curate. So when you're curating, that's when you're taking all of those great things from all of the different resources. So it could be your online textbook chapter. It could be something from the Library of Congress. It could be something, YouTube channel. And then you can also use different resources from the AEA online and take everything you need for that learning goal and put them into one spot. You also can create a hyperdoc, and that's pretty much just a page. It's almost like a page that's a website. So you take your page and you put your different hyperlinks in there. And then Mac and Via, which is another one of our online resources. And one of the reasons I thought that this would be helpful is because people already use Mac and Via, well, hopefully. It's a lot of times it's in their school, on their website. If their librarians are showing them how to get to it, they're used to it. And then it's something that you can incorporate in the ebooks that are already available in Mac and Via. And so the librarians in the different AEAs, we go together, and as a large group, we purchase content that goes into Mac and Via. And I know last year, for instance, in the spring, we worked with the Department of Ed, and we've got a bunch of social studies books that fit with the different standards, and we had, can't think of her name right now. Who did we have look at Wager?
Oh, Stephanie.
Stephanie Wager, a social studies expert, looked over that content. We also have science content that I'm going to show you in a minute, as well as others. And we can also, as different AEAs, we can purchase additional content for our Mac and Vias. So I know I have some other items in mine, and other, like here's Cheryl, one of the librarians in another AEA, and she has titles that I don't necessarily have. So you can reach out to your librarian if there's something you think would be useful for lots of schools, and they can possibly add it if the publishers allow us, and it's made in that format. And so what you want to think about is, where can they access this? What's going to help you have content already ready so that once the kids know the routine, they can just go and start learning? And where are they going to either turn in their work or share their learning? And that's going to look different at different age levels. So you might not need something like Google Classroom that also provides a place for them to turn it in. You might just need a place to share your content. And so I'm going to show you, whoops. So Mac and Via, and I want to show you, this is just an example, some of the online, almost all of our AEA online resources, when you're within them, will let you just share right to Google Classroom, and sometimes to Class Dojo and other items. So I don't know if you saw that, I just did this little GIF. So here I'm on TrueFlix, and I clicked share it, and I could just select Google Classroom, and then it automatically has my classes in there, so I don't have to go through and just get the hyperlink, which I could also do that if I'm not using one of those resources. And then just adding to Mac and Via, there's these things called groups. And here's a special group I made at Oak Ridge where they teach. So in here, we have groups that we set as a state. Your teachers can make groups if they're made group managers. I can make groups for my districts. Their librarian can make groups. It just so happens I spend a little more time with Mike than his school librarian does, so she gave me permission to work on her Mac and Via. And so here, on there, I'll show you theirs on a different one. But you can add external content so that it's all in Mac and Via, and if kids are used to going there for free reading, or teachers are used to going there to get books that they can show up on the large screen, then this might be a place where you can curate your content. And even though they're using their Google Classroom, this now is going to be in there for them next year. They could copy the classroom next year, but maybe they want to add more content to it and have it available year after year. Whoops, not that part yet. Whoops. I need to go. Oh, I had you guys locked in. I have another tab for it. Okay. So instead of showing you theirs, I decided I'm going to show you an elementary school, just because I want to show the science. So here's groups. So this is Bowman Woods. It's another school in their district. So the groups look just a little bit different on the elementary interface. And so if I were a student or a parent at Bowman Woods, I would go, and this would be what the page would look like. So it's got a lot of fiction, nonfiction, and then there's the groups. And I'm going to show you the science groups that we created. Yep. As an AEA, you can scroll down. And I think we're going to be doing this with social studies, but here we have all these items that we've aligned with the different science standards. So we've got Earth Science 1, 2, and 3. We've got the technology. We've got Life Science 1, 2, and 3. And then we've got all these different books. You want to click on one that fit within that. And so you could even make a group within this if you wanted. You could have this available. I know as they were reviewing some of their content for a upcoming assessment, they let their students go, and there was a specific book on infographics that they said, go to the group in Maccabeah, look at the infograph book, see if you can create some questions on these topics for our test. We'll see if you're thinking what we're thinking. And so they were able to just go and look. One of their students was using the read aloud feature. Others were looking and getting ideas. So what these are is the books that we already had tagged into these standards. They may or may not be the grade level that you want, but sometimes a picture book with an 8th grader is good because you can get that concept out. Sometimes you might need the more advanced content for your advanced students when everyone else needs a lower item. So some of that can be done, and then you can take items from this group and make your own group. And you can do it just by content, within a grade. There's all different kinds of ways you can make your groups within here. You can add assignments, you can add directions, you can add videos. It doesn't have to be Maccabeah content. So to me, that's kind of a natural go-to. Plus, it's an app, so it can be on iPads. And so then kids would just click on that app, and then they would learn how to navigate to that group. Okay. So those are just different ideas on how you can curate, because those are some of the biggest things. Find the stuff, and then put it in a package that kids can get to so that they are able to personalize their learning. Now we need to go back to the website, or to the slide deck. Whoops. Oh, shoot. Sorry about that. Here we go.
I think the biggest thing when it comes to blended learning, you cannot do all of this in one day. You can't do it all in 1 year. You can't do it all in 3 years. It's something that you have to take one piece, one time, and make one change in your classroom. Whether that be that, I've been working with a lot of teachers this year in my building who have come into model teacher visits with me, have seen Mike and I teach together. We're a unique situation in that we don't just blend our content, we blend our students, and we are firm believers that if you're an 8th grade science student, you belong to both of us, and we are both responsible for your education and what you know and what you leave us with. So, even if you don't have a teammate that's going to do that with you, you can at least do the same things in your classroom. So I have a lot of teachers that have come to me and asked me, like, how are you doing this? How did you get started? This is so much at the beginning. And I said, when I started this, I was ready to walk out the door and not teach again. I was teaching 5th and 6th grade science and math. And I was doing math and kids were not learning math. And some kids were learning math, but they were the kids that would have learned it whether I was in the room or not. And it was a lot of students not feeling confident in themselves and thinking that they were just dumb and that they would never get it, so why would they even try? So I had to reset my mind and say there is something out there because every kid can learn, and I'm the person in charge of making sure that happens. So I just started making small changes. One day I decided, you know what? My son's kindergarten teacher gets 35-year-olds to learn every day. And they're in different stations at different centers, and they're all doing all sorts of things. And I'm like, if she can do that, I can get some 5th graders to learn. You know what I mean? So as I went through that, and as I switched to just teaching science again, and going and even switching buildings. It was just starting small. One day you make one change. I decided to have 2 separate stations happening. And half of the kids were working on one thing, and half the kids were working with me in a small group. Then the next time I did that, they both were working on, like, there was a lab actually happening for the first time ever. I was not leading the lab. I put some instructions in front of them and I said, you need to know how to read and follow a lab. So here's what I would say to you. I typed it out, I put it in front of them, they worked in small groups. And my other small group was doing what I call the tech station. They were working on a simulation. And it was actually about like particles moving, you know, with the different states of matter. And I spent the entire class that day walking back and forth and just checking those groups. And once I saw how engaged they were, I was hooked. But it took me to be brave enough to make a change, just one thing at a time, and then it slowly evolved. And then obviously when he got stuck with me, then we kind of blew up because we were both going in the same direction and we just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And so I don't know, like, I feel like you're fairly similar with things that you did when you first got started too.
Oh, definitely, like I said, just that start with one thing, just make a small change, and then once you get to see those results, then you just want to keep adding some more. Yeah.
It's obviously our new favorite person, if you can't tell from the shirts. Like,
So, and you all know that technology is not the end-all be-all for good education. It's good teachers. So when teachers get hands-on technology, they're the ones that are able to make transformational change with their students. So hopefully you leave with one thing you want to try and go out there and keep transforming like you're already doing.
we all have more resources and information we could share with you for like days probably. So please feel free to reach out. Like, I'll stay up all night helping teachers now since I don't have to do it for the kids. Like, do you know what I mean? It's kind of amazing. We've actually been watching our students work all day just by looking at our phones. Like, we've been able to keep track of them all day. And it's pretty amazing. We never would have been able to do that a couple years ago. And, you know, with all the resources that she was able to provide us and that we knew were there, but we didn't know how to use, or we didn't know how to just wrap our mind around them. So reach out to anybody in your area that can help you in your schools, and obviously to us, because we want to see this go big. We want to see Iowa just be everything that it can be with our students.
I'm supposed to give a little plug for my team. There's going to be a digital learning summit this summer. Featuring Google Suite for Education. I guess that is all it. Thank you so much for listening to us talk at you for so long.